Yes, standard plasterboard can be used in a garage. As long as your garage is damp free and mold free and there's no water getting in there, standard plasterboard will be just fine. One thing you will have to bear in mind is if you're doing a garage conversion, you have to think a lot of the time about fire safety. Obviously, if a fire starts in the garage because you may have oil in there and cans and potentially a car in there, there could be a few ignition sources. So you have to check the building regulations or the building code in your area, because if you are converting a garage, they may ask that you use fire plasterboard. It's identified by a pink or red colour. I think in the States they call it Type X plasterboard. So before you start your garage renovation, just check if you need to use fireboard. So standard plasterboard offers a 30-minute fire resistance, whereas fireboard offers an hour fire resistance, and that's what the building inspectors look at when they come to assess your conversion or your planned project. So a little hack I have that's often used in a building site, it's not really a hack, is you can take conventional plasterboard and you can use some longer screws and actually double it up. So if one piece gives you half an hour fire protection, double it up and you get an hour fire protection, which is exactly the same as fireboard, but obviously you will increase the thickness of your wall. Whenever I'm plasterboarding a garage, I always make sure I don't run my plasterboard right down to the garage floor. If I'm building a stud wall, I always leave my plasterboard up slightly so there can be no moisture transfer from the garage floor up into the plasterboard. There's only 3 sizes of plasterboard thickness in existence. There's 9.5 millimeters, which I only ever use for overboarding ceilings, existing ceilings. 12.5 millimeter thick plasterboard is the most common, and that's 99% of the time that's what you'll be working with. It's handy to use, it's light enough. There's also 15mm thick plasterboard, but that creates a really heavy sheet, and I've never had to deal with that in all my construction experience. So 12.5mm plasterboard is the way to go, and it's standardized across the board. What you need to be aware of when using plasterboard in a garage is temperature fluctuations. So if you do have a cold garage, then I would recommend some kind of heating in there to keep it an ambient temperature all year round. If your garage is particularly damp, then your boards could be more susceptible to moisture. So you can actually buy moisture resistant plasterboard. So that's actually signified here by this green colour. So moisture resistant plasterboard is actually treated with a bit of a chemical that actually resists the growth of mould. It also has some stuff mixed in with the gypsum. So your plasterboard is only 2 bits of paper with gypsum in the middle. Your moisture resistant plasterboard has some stuff in there that means if it does get a little bit wet, it's less likely to blow and turn to mush. So if you're worried about damp in your garage, obviously you don't need to be worried about, and you're not worried about fire, then moisture resistant plasterboard could be a good choice. Because fire plasterboard is denser as well, I presume it will stand up to moisture a little bit better. So do bear in mind there's a little bit of an overlap. Because fire plasterboard is denser, it's also going to be better in terms of moisture, and it's also going to be better in terms of sound transmission. So although all these plasterboards are slightly tailored towards a specific niche, what you often find is sound plasterboard, moisture resistant plasterboard and fireboard are all that little bit denser, which means that they overlap a little bit in terms of their qualities. There are other alternatives to using plasterboard in a garage. You can buy some cladding systems, you can buy wall panelling. So they're pretty much your options. You've got traditional plasterboard and you can either tape and joint that or skim it all. You've got wall cladding or wall panelling and things like that. You can buy plastic cladding, or you can buy acoustic wall panelling with like the slats coming down vertically. You have a few different options. It just depends what you'd like to do in your garage for your specific application. I hope this video has shown you that you can use plasterboard in your garage as long as you follow a few best practices and try and maintain the ambient temperature in there as best you can. Plasterboard doesn't react well in damp environments with large fluctuations in temperature. So if you've learned something from this video, drop it a like, and if you want to be updated with more helpful DIY information, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.